Today on Locked On Red Wings, Bergen is reassigned. What does his future hold?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a podcast producer for the daily JAWWJ News Radio podcast. Well, Scotty's host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Scotty, happy Tuesday, buddy. How you doing?
Doing well, man. How about you?
Doing pretty well. Happy to be here on a Monday evening as we record this after the news that Jonatan Berggren was reassigned. We were going to talk about Berggren on today's episode regardless because he had been scratched for 5 straight games, and with him being one game away from waiver eligibility, we were going to have the discussion, what do you do with him? Well, they answered that question for us by Monday afternoon, reassigning him to the Grand Rapids Griffins. So now our question becomes, what does his future hold? Whether that be with the winged wheel or, in the greater scope of the NHL. We also want to talk about the monumental game that is happening today by the time you guys are listening to this against the Washington Capitals. So we'll cover that in today's episode. But yeah, Scotty, we want to start with the Berren conversation. And I mean, I don't want to start with the big question, like what does his future hold? Because that's a big time conversation. But I do wonder, when he was sent down with just one game until waiver eligibility, like what was the thought that crossed your mind?
Honestly, I mean, obviously that is the natural first thing to think of, and it's certainly the first thing I thought of, and everybody pretty much thought of. But I think that it's also important to note, Max Boltman pointed this out on X, Twitter, whatever it's called, that he loses that this season anyway. It's just if he hits that game mark, then it happens today versus it happening, after the last game of the season. So like, it's not like, this is something that the Wings can hold on to and keep for years and years or whatever. Like it was going to run out at the end of this season regardless. Which I think is a very important thing. And Max is obviously on top of everything like that. But I think I didn't associate it too much with that specifically. My brain more went to, kind of makes sense if he's going to keep getting scratched every night. It was kind of my only thought. I'm sure that Newsy and Yzerman are on at least a close enough page, if not the exact same page, about who they want to see out there and what they're trying to accomplish. And if Newsy, went in and had a conversation with Yzerman and was like, "Hey, man, I'm not playing him, for the next week, barring injury," and he already hasn't played in the last 2. And I think the decision was probably fairly easy. I'm not sure how much it really had to do with that specifically.
I think it absolutely had to do with the fact that his waiver eligibility was going to go away, but not like solely because of that. I think what you said does play in part. I think if they felt like this team was going to benefit from him being in the lineup, they would have played him and burned that bridge. So he would not have been sent back down. But I think they knew, with the fact, like, this is where, like, I agree with you, but I also disagree with you, right? Like, I do think the fact that they weren't playing him and were holding on was because they were thinking about does this team need long-term? Does this team benefit from Berggren being on the team, or is he better served being in Grand Rapids? So they played him for a few games. He drew a couple good penalties, but he wasn't providing a lot of offense. And we all know that defensively, he had a couple of really bad turnovers, and he gets beat along the boards and board battles. We know what he is at this point. Like, we know how good he is offensively, how good he can be, but we also know how bad he can be defensively. So they gave him 3 games to see what he could provide. And then the team started winning games with him out of the lineup, 3 of their last 4, or I guess now 3 of their last 5. And so I think with Sprong as the healthy scratch as well, they looked at it and went, okay, well, we're starting to turn things around without Berggren in the roster. So if we had started winning games with him in the roster, because Lalonde's very clearly very superstitious, right? Like he's going to go to the goalie that's winning him the hockey games, right? So I think that this really is a conjunction between the fact that the Red Wings began to win games again without Berggren in the lineup, and that because of that, they didn't want to shake up the lineup and burn his waiver eligibility when he could go back to Grand Rapids and play big minutes and help a playoff push with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Because I'll be honest, like I've been really impressed with what I've seen out of Simon Edvinsson, and I think when we talked about Berren, a lot of the conversation was, well, it was give or take. In the offensive zone when he was carrying the puck, he was very tough on the puck to the point where he was drawing penalties. But if you get him along the boards, he'd turn the puck over because he couldn't take the physicality aspect. And then defensively, he doesn't add a lot. It was a very give and take conversation. So, and then they started winning games without him in the lineup. I was just like, it does have to do with the eligibility and them playing it very carefully and it's not like a slap in the face of the player, more of they didn't want to burn that bridge. They wanted to make sure they gave him the best opportunity to get minutes and succeed at what other level that is. I think that's what it comes down to. I think it is yes, but also this too. You know what I mean? It's a yes and not a yes and that's it.
Sure. Yeah. I don't think if it was part of the thought process, which I'm obviously that's part of the thought process, right? But if it was part of the decision, I guess I'll say instead, then I don't think it was the biggest factor, like at all. I think they looked around and went, "We're not playing you. We're going to continue to not play you." That's probably all there is to it. Again, like the thing that I go back to was the thing that Boltman pointed out on Twitter, which is that it goes away at the end of the year anyway. Yeah. So, like, I mean, I guess for this season, great. For the last 10 games, you're going to prevent him from being waiver eligible. Well, guess what? After game 82, that's going to get lifted anyway. So I really, again, certainly part of the thought process, certainly on the table and something that they discussed and was certainly part of the conversation and the reasoning. But as far as like biggest reason why, I think it really goes back to what it has been for the last year and a half with Berger, and that's just trying to find consistent playing time in the lineup every night.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's one of those things, like if he had earned the minutes, he'd have been in the roster.
Right.
And because they weren't confident that he had earned the regular minutes, they were like, okay, well, let's hold him out and see how the team does the next 5 games. And they were like, you know what? I think we're fine without him. Send him back down. That's why I say it is a factor, right? Like they didn't want to burn that 4th game without knowing where he's better served. And
sure.
It's clear that with where he's at and where the roster is at, he's better served in Grand Rapids, helping a playoff push, getting big minutes there. Now, I do think that this constant jerking around of Jonatan Berggren does have an effect on his future. I mean, we already heard rumblings, right? And this is where we get into what does his future hold. We had already heard rumblings that Jonatan Berggren wanted to be traded or Eisman wanted to shop him. He's a very attractive trade piece because he is he may have room for improvement still, but he is an NHL caliber talent. But with how deep this roster is on the wing as it is right now, you could trade him to try and upgrade the roster as it is and give him a better opportunity on a different team to play that needs that hole plugged. So I think that we're coming quickly here to a conclusion where he might end up getting traded in the offseason, especially as this team tries to address bigger needs, on their lineup.
Yeah, I think this offseason is obviously, knowing what we know about the waiver exemption and whatnot being lifted, this offseason is where all of that is very obviously going to be answered. And I think that is the fork in the road. You either have to really plant your flag and go, you know what, this guy is going to be on the team next year and he's going to be a fixture in the lineup next season, and we're confident in that, or you have to trade him. I think the days of, back and forth and him being a fringe, like bubble candidate on the roster are gone by August of this year. I think that this will come to a conclusion, whether it's all in or all out, one of the two, it will absolutely happen over the summer.
Yeah, absolutely. And, if he is on the roster next year and he earns that full-time spot. I mean, we were talking at the start of this year, right? We had thought he was a shoo-in because he played 67 games last year before getting sent down. And in fact, in 67 games last year, yes, we know about the same issues that he has this year are still there, but it's not like he wasn't productive last year. He had 20 points in 67 games played. I know he got favorable minutes and good matchups and all that, but he was a 51% Corsi 4 percentage. He was 4.6 relative, which is really the number that matters, like relative to his teammates. He was a positive, which is really good to see. That's at all strengths, not just 5-on-5. But even at 5-on-5, he was 1% relative. So, like, even by the smallest of margins, he was a benefit to the team when he was on the ice. So we were shocked when he got sent down. I think I have a better understanding to it now because I think last season I was less attuned to the defensive side of the game for forwards, something I've really felt I've learned a lot this season. But this season, when in the 12 games he has had the opportunity, again, he's contributed on the score sheet, not this 3-game sample size we got this time on the call-up, but in the previous 9, he had contributed on the score sheet, but was a defensive black hole, a 42% Corsi 4 percentage, negative 1.4% relative. Like, it's just very clearly like they know he's a great offensive talent, but that's clearly not why he's not up. It's the other side of the game that they want him to get better at. And that makes a lot of sense when you know what you know with Derek Lalonde. But I mean, if Yzerman thought he needed to be here, Yzerman would make that executive decision too. So, like, it's not just Lalonde. I think this is a joint decision. And I wouldn't, if he's on the team next year, I root for Jonatan Berggren. I love his skill set and what he can bring offensively. I want him on the team. But given the direction this is heading and the jerking back and forth of not sure if he can make the NHL roster, I would not be surprised if you see him dealt in the offseason to try and upgrade this roster and give him another opportunity somewhere else to play full time.
Yeah, completely agree. And like I said earlier, it's going to be all in or all out one way or the other. It's going to be like we're going to know by July that this dude is going to be a third line winger or he's going to be in a different organization by the end of July. Like that's pretty much the days of him being on the bubble come to an end here in whatever 10, 11 games.
Either way, I'm rooting for him. I think he's got a future in the NHL. I just don't know if it's going to be with the Red Wings. We'll see.
Yep, for sure.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we'll give you practice updates as that leads us into our conversation about the monumental game in Washington coming up tonight by the time you guys are listening to this.
Washington Monument.
Oh, I didn't even do that. Stay tuned to Locked On Red Wings. 11 games left in the NHL season if you're the Detroit Red Wings, and regardless of where they're at in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is the #1 choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, Crosby, Makar, McKinnon, Kucherov's having an insane year. Like, I know it's known, but holy crap, it's an insane year. We'll record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves if you want a goalie, plus, minus, or more in a given game. To win 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Red Wings fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to $100 matched on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Red Wings practiced on Monday, and we got a lot of updates on players. First and foremost, Ville Husso. Lalonde said he's suffered some minor setbacks and is still really nowhere near close to being ready. I don't honestly at this point have kind of written him off for the remaining 11 games of the season, which sucks because he'd be huge to helping reinforce the goaltending triple tandem. And even just adding more competition to that locker room as well in that role. But it is what it is in that regard. Jeff Petrie is the latest Red Wing to come down with the sickness. He is down with the sickness, as the kids would say. And so he is to be determined for tomorrow, as is Jake Woolman, who is still battling off the lower body injury. So, if both Woolman and Petrie can't go tomorrow, which I have a feeling Petrie is going to fight through it tomorrow and play, but if Woolman and Petrie can't play tomorrow, I think you got two options. Now, the obvious option is Petrie's a right shot defenseman. Justin Hall's a right shot defenseman. Hall's going to slide in and fill that gap. I mean, you got 7D on 8D on this roster right now. That's the obvious one. And if that's the case, I mean, what do your pairs look like, right? You know, Sherratt, Sider. Do you want Edvinsson and Hall? That would scare me a little bit, but I don't want Gostisbehere and Edvinsson. I don't know. It'd get real sketchy.
It would be, yeah, that would be a tough one. I think, man. Yeah, you might kind of have to.
Yeah, I'm not sure at all on that one, but that's why I have a dark horse candidate, and this one
Brian
is
Fisher.
God no, dude. My
Out of retirement. Out of retirement, according to his elite prospects page. And send him out there.
Don't think that's a wise idea. I dislocated my shoulder sleeping the other night, so I probably shouldn't play professional hockey.
Honestly, if you got a goal for every shoulder dislocation in the NHL level, you would be Wayne Gretzky.
But my dark horse candidate, and this is purely from the fan side of my brain, the logic doesn't support it, but you called up Simon Edvinsson when Jake Wollman went down. What if Petrie can't play and Wollman can't play? You instead call up Albert Johansson. And this is why I say the logic doesn't support it. Petrie's right shot defenseman. Albert Johansson is also a left shot defenseman.
Yeah.
But let's ignore that. Screw the logic. We're going to fun hours. Albert Johansson is deserving of an NHL shot with this team. He's having a great season. He's a defensive defenseman. Why not call him up and see what he can do? Because we already know Justin Hall ain't it.
I mean, yeah, again, like from the fan perspective, right? If you just talk to the pure fandom side of your brain, then yeah, absolutely, that'd be electric. But I do think there's a few logical hurdles. We'll say some mental gymnastics you have to do to put that blue line together. I actually don't think it would be like the most difficult thing in the world. I think you could probably figure it out. You have multiple guys who could in a pinch, I'll say, play either side. I think you could piece it together with somewhat ease. I don't think it's like the most impossible thing ever, but yeah, I also don't think that this scenario is very likely.
It's not, but imagine this, okay? Imagine this.
Though.
Imagine this. Edvinsson Sider, top pair.
Yep. Wow. Okay, starting off with a bang.
Just going with a bang. This is a hypothetical.
Yep.
Where this is on the fun scale, not the realistic scale, the fun scale.
Yeah.
Edvinsson Sider, left, right. Sherratt, he can play right. He's obviously much better on the left. We already know that. But you bump Sherratt back to the right side, put him on the second pair, pair him up with Albert Johansson. All right, you're left on. But you got Gostisbehere, you got Hall. Either of those guys can play third pair right side.
Does that imply that the third pairing is Ghost and Hall?
Ghost and Hall or Ghost and Mata? Because Mata can play either side.
Sure. Okay, so Ghost and Mata. You just leave that third pair.
Ghost and Mata. We leave it as it is.
We leave it how it is. Okay, sure. I forgot that we were right. I forgot.
Or you could do Ghost and Johansson, because you got to remember, Johansson's a defensive defenseman. He's got 17 points in 54 games. We don't like plus minus, but with the AHL, there's no advanced analytics.
Introduction to the NHL than
being
having your defensive pairman be Shane Gostisbehere. I think that sounds absolutely beautiful.
I'm just saying, man. Like, that's exciting. It's not realistic.
It is exciting.
The logic doesn't support it, but it would be fun. And I just want to see Albert Johansson in a Red Wings uniform. So if Petrie and Wollman can't go, rather than sticking a hole on the second pair with Edvinsson, why don't we call up Johansson and just roll the dice?
It would be objectively funny if in the biggest game of the season they did that too. They're just like, you know what? Biggest game of the year. Let's do it, man. Let's do it. Highest stakes in any game in the entire season comfortably. Let's put out two rookies on the blue line. That sounds like a plan. I mean, I really wouldn't hate it. I don't think that's, hindsight's going to be 2020 with that one. But yeah, honestly, I think the most likely scenario is probably just Petrie plays. But if that doesn't, I also think it's significantly more likely that we just see Hall out there.
And like, guys, I'm just goofing for the I'm like 75% goofing on this one.
Yeah, hey, that's still
Like
25% serious though.
25% of me really does want to see Albert Johansson at the NHL level. Probably
Sure.
not for the biggest game of the season. Probably unwise for the biggest game of the season. But I mean, I think he's
Biggest
NHL
game
ready.
of the year, and put him with Ghost. Book it. Let's
Book
go.
it. I think
Surely
realistically,
nothing can go wrong.
if Petrie and I think Petrie does tough it out and plays.
Yeah.
I think Woolman might even play. I mean, he's to be determined for tomorrow's game. He got a full practice in on Monday as well.
That would be huge, obviously.
That'd be huge. I mean, your pairs could look so much stronger with Woolman in the lineup. Like Woolman returns, and we did this episode last week. Like you have options all of a sudden on defense.
Yeah, big time.
But I think that it does give you, if they both are out, like it's probably just going to be Hull and Edvinsson, and then they keep Gossis, Berren, Mata together, which means your second pair is probably going to be sheltered a lot more because they don't trust Hull in the defensive zone. They shelter him like crazy, even more than Mata.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that means Edvinson's probably going to get a lot less minutes, but also a lot more offensive zone time, which means conversely, Sider and Sherratt are going to be getting killed in that game with defensive zone faceoffs only against Ovechkin, which they probably were regardless. But it
just happens to be absolutely on fire now, which is great timing for us.
So in reality, I'm going to say it. I hope Petrie can skate tomorrow. I think that's in the best interest of us all.
Yep.
So, Scotty, we got to get another quick break. That was a fun little brain exercise. We got to get back to really actually previewing the game against the Washington Capitals. So stay tuned for that segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Biggest game of the season, right? And it feels like the last 4 or 5 games we've been saying biggest game of the season.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
when you're in the thick of a wild card race that is this close, I feel like that's pretty much how it should feel. The next game you play is the biggest game of the season. But right. I think for the last couple of weeks, especially, we've kind of noticed and circled this game on the calendar. I'm like, this is a huge deal.
This and the Islanders, right? I mean, and obviously we talked about how we were encouraged by what we saw against the Predators, but it would have still been beneficial to get the actual 2 points, and they didn't.
For sure.
The Capitals have won 5 of their last 6 games. It seems like all these teams in the wild card are taking turns getting hot. Red Wings got hot, won 6 in a row, then lost 7 in a row. The Islanders won 6 in a row, lost 6 in a row. And now the Capitals have won 5 of their last 6. So hopefully it's their turn to get cold. I mean, if the Red Wings win this game, because they're 1 point behind the Washington Capitals for the wild card with 11 games left, the Capitals have 12 games left. They have a game in hand. You would then retake that playoff spot, but also get a much-needed tiebreaker in head-to-head. Like, that's huge as we come down the stretch, and it's still really tight. They're led up front by, of course, Alex Ovechkin, who's been on a heater, by the way. Like, just last week, he reached 20 goals on the season. He's already at 26.
He's been on a huge heater,
Yeah, he's going to finish the season with 30 goals after just barely hitting 20. It's crazy. He's got 58 points in 67 games. Dylan Strom's got 58 points in 70 games. So, like, what's interesting about this team is this is not a good Capitals team. Like, they're not. Yet they're still there. Like, through sheer willpower. In fact, they're winning their games in a lot of the same ways that the Wings did. Like, fortunate shooting percentage, some puck luck, and just right place, right time. And that's going all right for them. Like, you look at their advanced metrics, they're 25th, Wings are 27th at Corsi. I think it's very similar for expected goals for percentage. Their special teams is just a few points behind the Red Wings. Like, these two teams metrically are the same. Like, it's the Office same picture meme. Like, you showed the 2 logos, it's the same picture. They're the same team. The Red Wings are getting better production from their best players, but just by a little bit.
A lot of players. The
Yeah.
Capitals are like 5th to last in the NHL in goals scored, just like straight up on the season. And obviously, again,
but they're
tale
getting
of 2 halves,
right
and they've been really, really good lately. But I mean, yeah, like you compare a lot of the like team numbers. Yeah, the Wings are. This is a weird betting game too. Both of these teams are minus money, which you don't see too terribly often. But again, it's a testament to how equal both of these teams are at the present moment. The Capitals being at home are slightly favored, but both of these teams are minus money. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is strange because it's a road game. The Red Wings are bad on the road this season too. So it's really strange that they would be road dogs, but I think that just speaks to how mediocre the Capitals also are.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
a win.
100%.
They're a hot team right now, and they're also got very good goaltending out of Charlie Lindgren, who's got a 912 save percentage on the season, 2.6 goals against average. He's been fantastic, but this is a very beatable team. But the Red Wings, like Lalone said, are very mentally fragile right now. And while they did lose against the Predators, I'm hoping that they continue to build off the increasingly better performances that we've seen from them and can stop their hot streak cold in the tracks, because you lose, the season's not over. You still got 10 games left, and you're only 3 points back, but you win, and now you're back in the playoff spot and you control your destiny again. Like, you got to win this hockey game. This is the must-have win of the season. Like, I will go on record right now and say this game is more important than any game of the remaining 10. Because it's the team you're directly competing with.
Right. Yeah. I don't think that's really even. Yeah. I don't think that's really even up for the question. I mean, they obviously play good teams. They play interdivision teams a lot at the end of the season. Oddly enough, it maybe goes against your theory. They actually do play the Capitals again.
Okay, well,
remaining this season.
True.
So depending on 5 games from now when they play them again, depending on what the standings look like, that could obviously just be kind of this game 2.0. But yes, any game against the Capitals is huge given what the standings look like. And it's the Islanders have slowly kind of slipped. They went on a huge losing streak. You beat them, etc. It's pretty much neck and neck. These are the two teams that are fighting for that last spot, man.
I mean, yeah, there are still plenty of big games left, but you talk about the Capitals game on April 9th. That one's at LCA, but by then it might not matter, right? Like, that's why this game matters so much.
For sure.
So no. Shoot, man. When it comes to this game, I don't know what else is left to say besides just win.
Yeah, this is again, cannot express the magnitude of it. And man, do I want to come on this show tomorrow talking about a win.
Right.
Oh.
Well, and you take a step back, big picture, right? And I know that anything I say is going to be overshadowed by the lead that they had in the wild card that they blew on that losing streak. But I mean, this is at the start of the season. This is where we wanted to be, right? Sure. Like, we wanted to play playing games that mattered in the final stretch of the season. That was our expectation. So, like, as a season as a whole, I'm still very pleased by what's happened, but it's definitely dampened by that huge losing streak that, I mean, you were comfortable. But I mean, this is still a season where they're going to, with 2 wins, they'll surpass their point total from last year. Like,
yeah.
Geez, man. Just win. Just win.
Just win, baby.
Scotty, you got any final thoughts?
My favorite stat, the Capitals, one of the worst teams in the NHL in the face-off circle, baby. Let's go.
We could use that because we need to win face-offs.
Yeah, especially in our own zone. That'd be really cool. That'd be really, really cool. Yeah.
But all right, Scotty, you got any final thoughts, dude?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Recapping what I hope is a win. Please stay tuned for that one. Same time, same place. See your team every day.
Every day.